Welcome in to the Bobby Carpenter Show on this Thursday. Schlegs, it is All Hallows Eve. It is Nick Saban's birthday. I mean, maybe that's why he doesn't age. Vampires, 7 national championships. Maybe that's the secret. Woody Hayes' birthday was on Valentine's Day. Maybe you need one of those kind of exotic holiday birthdays to be able to be successful. And I guess I'm talking to Cousin Eddie over here to my right, you're somehow sweatier than when I saw you earlier, what have you been doing? You've got a robe and some sort of hunting cap. Your head, dude. Did you get a workout in the 20 minutes? I was blowing leaves. What are you doing?
I'm doing nothing. I'm just a guy being a dude that just likes to sweat. I mean, I got the man fur, and I got this robe on, which is kind of nice. And this is my Halloween costume. It's cousin Schlegs. I got my Rocky boots on. I got a robe. I got horse braided belt. It's just stuff that I would have at the farm. And if I was unloading the shitter, like this is exactly how I would dress in the middle of the night, Boom.
Well, I guess in the middle of the night, I think it was kind of mid-morning, maybe 10, 11-ish.
It was still dark outside.
No, it wasn't. They were looking out there. He's drinking coffee.
Well, that was multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, he came out there later, but I mean, there was time earlier where he was pumping it in. I mean,
doesn't matter.
I think the robe, Schlegs, more than just a piece of apparel. The robe is a lifestyle. Why don't you stand up and give the folks a little spin around so they can see? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's a good look. I love it.
It is a good look. I mean, it's got pockets, Like, I love this. I mean, I should just start doing this all the time.
Still popping. I mean, you got any pants on underneath that thing?
I got some shorts. Gotta make it. We're doing a thing at the Armory where it's like come in, get in a Halloween contest, and after the show, I'm going to go in there and do some dynamic bench, rocking this stuff. I'm going to be super sweaty, but you got to have a shirt on. So I'll make sure I keep this on, or I'll put a tank top on underneath. But you got to be gym appropriate. And we're having a little contest. Having fun, man. Here we go.
What is the dynamic bench? Explain to the folks what that means. Because
we're just going to do some bands. It's called accommodating resistance. I can go down the rabbit hole with that, but
yeah, explain it.
I'll just basically take, I think today, I don't know what's necessarily on my chart, but I think it's about 50% of my max bench. I'll take that. I'll put bands on that equal roughly 25% of my max bench. So I'm doing 75% at the top, and I'm going to do 9 sets of three sets at different grips. And I always like to start with my weakest one first, and it's different for everybody. My wide grip bench is by far my weakest, and then I'll go close grip, then I'll go regular, and I'll do that, and it's back and forth. It's kind of rapid fire, no more than a 30-second break in between it, and then I'll do a bunch of other hypertrophy stuff with it, and we're just gonna have fun, man. It's one of those fun. It's a fun day. That
sounds great. I might have to try to work that in with my son. I feel like that's a great volumizer, if you will. Get some nice mass going, hypertrophy, blow it up.
Fast and violent.
Yeah, fast and violent. Get some speed. I like that. Well, Buckeyes, it's Thursday, Schlegs. We've been on a long journey, an unexpected journey, if you will. This Thursday show is going to be huge. We got Ben Stevens coming up, as always, the Wet Your Beak, and help you make some money here. Heading into the holiday season. We have Thanksgiving, but really, as of tomorrow, I believe there'll be 60 days left in the year. How's that sound for you? Yeah, that's pretty bumpy. So 60 days left. So a chance to maybe win some money going into the holidays, wet your beak a little bit. So Ben always stops by. I'll be about 1:05 here today on the show. And then also with this, Schlegs, we've been on this, like I said, this wild journey, if you will, a unique journey this week where there's been a lot of analyzing, maybe overanalyzing the Ohio State program, the plays, the players, the culture, the fans, everything. It's all there for you, Schlegs. It was all right there. And so where are we at on Thursday? How are we feeling now after all of this stuff has come through? And you and I have had multiple brain aneurysms right now trying to figure this thing out. Last night I walk into my kitchen and my son's watching the Yankees-Dodgers and asked him who he's cheering for, and he's like, the Yankees. I'm like, the Yankees? He's like, yeah, Dad, the Dodgers are the richest team in baseball. I'm like, wait, are you telling me that I've got a son who now believes the Yankees are an underdog? But in his defense, my man Cullen's 11. They haven't won a World Series in his lifetime. we grew up when they kind of just snuffed out the Indians at the end of the 90s. They won 4 in a row and then won another one like 8 or 9 years later. But he's never really seen them win. So they've never been like the evil empire to him. I was like, gosh, I'm cheering for the Dodgers just because you can't cheer for the Yankees. And I'm like, did I fail as a dad with him being a Dodgers fan, him being a Yankees fan? I don't know. I'm not sure. I've got to ask myself some hard questions on that, kind of where I led to and what ultimately happened. But in that moment, like just traversing the whole swath of emotions that we've experienced this week, where are you now as we're starting to kind of head into it's the big can of polish day? We're going to figure out what we got, what we like moving forward on the Thursday practice and then the haze in the barn, if you will.
Yeah, sometimes it's paralysis by analysis. And I think everybody likes to overanalyze. And we've heard a lot of things this week, Bob. And you know what, guys, everybody that's out there commenting, you can do it, but do it in a respectful fashion. And I have no problem with it because then we get to talk about it. And I think that you and I, Bob, like to come from an approach of we're just seeing things from a different perspective and try to be rational. I feel good about this week. Why? Well, I believe in well, here's the deal. The ultimate test will come on Saturday. And I like to wait till I can see it. And I think the biggest thing is we've all been waiting for, and it started at the very beginning. Like we want to
once said, I've been waiting for a girl like you. Now, is that the same waiting?
Yeah,
we've been waiting. Like Tom Petty, the waiting is the hardest part.
The waiting is the hardest part. That's what it is. And I think it's the waiting for a complete game from a team that we've been told and we see and we believe is the best roster in college football, along with having Jim Knowles being brought in, then having Chip Kelly being brought in, which I think, Ryan did a nice job, especially this year, of knowing like, hey, we need to bring Chip in for this. And then you saw, a 1-point loss to Oregon. Great competitive game on the road, had chances to win. Both sides of the field, man, had chances to win that game and put it out of reach. And we were 1 point short. Then you go into a bye week. Then you see Nebraska get beat down by Indiana, who's everybody's like, whoa, what's going on with Indiana? And then we have a bye week to get ready for them. And we don't really do what we have to do to put it away in the first half. Like there was opportunities to put it away with a short field on the first series of the game with, and being able to score, right? Because we're really good in the red zone on offense. So you score that. And I'm not going to go back. This is rational. This is rational. You score there. Then you get down, you don't miss a field goal. Now the score is 24-3 at halftime, completely different game, but we didn't do it. We didn't execute. And then you had the third quarter, and we're 1 for 10 on third downs. We're running the football. We're not making any headway. Then they go up and score. Offense marches right down, throwing the football, and you score a touchdown. Defense comes out and completes the game, and we saw that. So I'm like, okay, there were some really good things. There are some things that we got to clean up. What is our identity in the run game? How are we going to utilize the pass and the weapons that we have potentially to set up the run game? What are the schematic, what are the personnel things that we're going to do on our offensive line to be better? So now you have this week. That's what I'm ready to see. And again, it goes back to, and everybody has this perception, but when you have guys that come out and talk about, hey, man, we want to go win a national championship, and you don't necessarily look the part predicated upon what everybody is saying, that you have the best roster in football, and you still haven't put a complete game together going into week 10, people start to throw up red flags, and they start to look at all these different areas and you and I, Bob, are just like, hey, go out there, win your one-on-ones, execute the game plan, and go beat the number 3 team in the country in their home field. And so I'm just excited for the first 2 series of this game, first 2 or 3 series, to see what does our game plan look like? What is our identity, both on offense and defense, to say, hey, man, here we are. Let's go Buckeyes and actually enjoy watching the football game.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. There'll be a lot of juice. There's going to be a lot of energy. I've said this before. I said it earlier this week. I'll say it tomorrow. I'm honestly glad this game is on the road. It feels like you get the chance to kind of internalize everything, brings you together. There's going to be a lot of energy. Like you cannot come out flat on the road this game. You've been at Penn State. You're walking down through their Schlegs. They got the chain link fences on each side. It's like entering Shawshank. They're screaming, yelling at you, craziness, throwing drinks. Like it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And they'll be ready to go. And sometimes, you need a little adversity. And they had the loss. I would have rather played that Nebraska game the following week. And there's a lot that's been made. Like, hey, the offensive line, you had a week and a half, 2 weeks to get it right, and it still didn't look good. And we'll get some of the headlines about what's going to obviously happen and what the status of Zen is and where they're at. But I think it's good to have this game right now. I think this is the game that they ultimately need because, Schlegs, in life, sometimes you just want to find out about yourself.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, like, young people don't get told the truth anymore. We're so worried about their feelings, how they're going to feel, how they're going to respond, what it's going to be like. And so you never tell them the truth. They never get to really find out what you're made of. The only way you find out the truth about yourself is by doing truthful things, which are hard things, which puts you up against it. And so this Buckeye team right now, they've won a lot of games. They've lost one. They could probably afford to lose another and still make the playoff, but you don't really want to tempt that. And that's not the way you want to go in. And you want to win a big game. And This is a big game. It's a game you've had circled. It's a series, knock on wood, that you've dominated going back since the inception, and really a lot since James Franklin's got there. I mean, he's
9-1.
1-9. He's won the 2016 game. Schlegs, we were 3-1 while we were there. I'm trying to think, like, there's been a handful of losses, but all of them have been good, close games. So I anticipate this game being incredibly close. I anticipate it being tough. I anticipate it being physical. I don't necessarily think it has to be close at the end. I think Ohio State can big play this a little bit and maybe open it up. Penn State's defense is kind of ripe for the picking. They're good in the box on both sides. But you have to ask yourself, like, how good are they receiver perimeter? How good are they in the perimeter on defense with their DBs? Those will be the questions that we'll be able to answer for you. And we'll get into all that here throughout the rest of the show. Like I said, we got Ben Stevens coming up in about 20 minutes. We've got our headlines. We'll get a little bit of tailgate talk. We'll answer some more of your questions on the comments over there that they've been thrown in the YouTube chat. So like always, please like, subscribe, leave your comments. We love them. Questions, they're great. May not always agree with them, but it's all good. We got export here right now. I want to tell you about that because we tell you about it every day. But you want to protect your grill. You want to protect what matters most with an export mouth guard. Professional athletes wear them. They're designed by NHL team dentists. They protect your teeth and your brain from those high impact hits. They have 3 layers of advanced protection, patented use of carbon fiber. They 3D print it right to your grill so it fits like a glove right on your teeth for better performance, better protection, max comfort, and of course, clear communication. That always helps. Focus on your game, not on your gear. Go to export.com/Bobby. Save 15%. Don't take chances with your safety. Export, protect what matters most. Coming up next, little lift it or leave it, Schlegs.
Ooh.
Here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
It's just, that's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yep.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, now it's time, Schlegs. We do a little lift it or leave it. And we love this. Got our guy Pat involved, and Pat's going to jump on in here. He's going to ask some questions, and either we're going to lift them, give them those gun Schlegs, boom, gun show, or we're going to leave it. And so, Pat, why don't you jump on in here and start firing away?
What's up, guys? Yeah, so our first question is it's Ohio State, Penn State this week. It's the game we've been talking about all week. It's a perfect game to kick off. Big noon kickoff this Saturday. It's a perfect way to kick off big noon kickoff. Leave it or lift it. It's
the perfect way to kick off November, to start this. Like, this is a game, Schlegs, that I feel like on the calendar has always been this time of year. It's always around Halloween. You always get juiced up for it. And so for it to be on this, like I've always felt like I've watched this game at Halloween parties. I feel like there was one time when we went there in 2003 when you were still getting redshirted. Scott McMullen comes in for Craig Krenzel, gets a little spooky, gets a little scary. Nick Mangold and I are going to go to Athens for OU's Halloween afterwards, after the game. Thought we'd beat them by a ton. We don't. Takes a long time. We still get down to the game. They're kicking like a 62-yard field goal that they barely miss. But holy smokes, it was a great one. But this is the perfect time of year for this game, and it's the perfect time, I think, in the season for the Buckeyes to have it.
That's when the fangs come out, Bob. And I love these games, these Halloween-type games. But to your point, I love this game at night. You and I played in it when it was at night. But for Ohio State, a noon kickoff, I kind of like it. They're going to have to bring the juice. They're going to have to play together. They're going to have to play fast. And that's what I really want to see from these guys too this week. Just lift it.
All right, Pat, let's lift that up.
Our next question here, guys, is we got our first set of college football rankings coming up on Tuesday. There's going to be at least 3 teams who you're not expecting to be in that list. Lift it or leave it.
So 3 is a lot. I'm going to go with a lift it or a leave it because I think you can get 2. I think you may have Indiana maybe creep up into the top. Right now, like you have Clemson and Iowa State as the 11 and 12. They're actually tied in the AP at 9. I think a lot of this is going to look the same as the AP poll. So I'm not going to say much else. Now, that's based off today. So should Ohio State lose again? Where do they go? Should Penn State lose? Where do they go? There's not a lot of other ranked matchups. I think Notre Dame and A&M will both be in there. I think Indiana could slide in. I think maybe 1 or 2, but not 3. I'm going to leave it.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment there, Bob. I'm going to say probably 2. Leave it.
Pat, what we got?
All right, guys. So we start right there. If Indiana turns it around and they can make the college football playoff, it's the greatest college football turnaround in college football history.
There's been a lot of great turnarounds this year. You look at what Navy and what Army did. I mean, the Navy's 1 loss, Army's still undefeated. You look at what Vanderbilt's done, and they're 5-3, and they've had some huge wins. The thing is, though, when you look at Indiana, like Vanderbilt, has always been a doormat in the conference. Like they struggle to get to the top 5, 6 teams, and that was when there's only 12 in the conference. And now, I mean, you've grown this thing into a behemoth. It's even tougher for them. And they're sitting there. They're undefeated. Are they 8-0? I think they may only lose 1 game. I don't even possibly 2, but I think it's 1. This is the greatest single season turnaround. And some of these other turnarounds, like you look at A&M and what they've done, like some of it's in their second year with a coach. This is the first year that you had Curt Cignetti get there. He came in, he brought some dudes from JMU, and they were rolling. So I'm gonna lift this because I can't think in recent memory of another time where a team went from the started at the bottom. Now they're here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna agree with that. I'm gonna lift that as well. I think Michael Elko is in his first year at Texas A&M.
Yes.
But they also had recruiting classes. They also have had more money, right? I think some of those things that you got to take into consideration when you look at the turnaround. And even Dion has been there.
Even Pitt wasn't great last year, and they're undefeated now.
Right.
But but
he's been there. He's been there. Like he has a system, and I think what Cignetti did the best was he brought some of that culture from the transfer portal to there, right? Which brings in the mindset. And again, leadership has no age. Doesn't matter how long you've been there or not. Now we're finding that out in college football. And what he's been able to do with Indiana and really change their identity as to like, hey, we're somebody to be reckoned with. And as you look at them, if they had a different logo on their helmet, a different brand, would they be sitting right now at 13? The answer is no, they would not be.
No, they wouldn't. All right, Pat, we'll have one more real quick.
Yeah, we got to lead with that one, like you just mentioned. Undefeated Pitt takes on SMU this weekend. That is the most evenly matched game of the weekend. Lift it or leave it.
Well, I don't know if it's the most evenly matched. If you look at the line, SMU's favored by 8.5. It's down there, the Pony Express. There's some other games that are kind of crazy that they have tighter lines than you would think about where they could potentially be with some of these ranked teams. I'm going to leave this because I think Ohio State, Penn State is probably maybe the most evenly matched. But this is the game that I checked. I checked to make sure at ACC Network on YouTube, Schlegs, because I'm going to be watching this on Saturday night.
I agree with you, Bob. I think the most evenly matched up game is the Penn State game, but I like this one in particular for what's like we're talking about SMU and Pitt right now. That's crazy talk, right? And the ACC and the Big 12, like it's completely up for grabs. And these are the matchups that you want to see, especially like Pitt coming off where they had 6 turnovers last week versus Syracuse. SMU's been turning the ball over. What's going to happen? It's in Dallas. Who's going to rise up in this game and take control? Absolutely.
All right. That's it for that. We're going to go with our headlines coming up next. Get some news on 𝗟𝗩𝗘 and some surprising information about Will Howard, about how good he has actually been this year. Coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, now it's time for headlines brought to you by our friends at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity Whole Health, they've got treatment plans to help you feel better, whether it's weight loss, low energy, muscle loss, poor sleep. They can help you with all of it. Whether you're a dude or dudette, they can help you with it as well. They've got customized plans from healthcare professionals that's going to tailor it to your needs. You go to affinitywholehealth.com. You schedule online for your free consultation. You go in, they do a workup. What do you want to do? Do you want to have semaglutide for weight loss? Do you want some TRT to get some more juice back in your life so you can do all the things you do, work out, run around, lift weights, coach your kids, just enjoy life the way you used to. So you develop the plan. And here's the best part, folks. They will ship it to your house within 2 days. Be sitting there on your porch. You don't have to go back in every week for your treatments. It is handled and taken care of and sent right to your door. So go to affinitywholehealth.com today and start getting that taken care of. All right, we got a couple things we want to get to. First of all, let's get to 𝗟𝗩𝗘 and where he's at, what the word is with him from Ryan Day. Ryan Day's had his press availability, and as we toss this up here, Pat, about Zen, thought as maybe he could come back. He was carried off. He ended up being carted off, got that left leg injury, it looks like. But as we throw that up here, Pat, they made the news that 𝗟𝗩𝗘 will not be available on Saturday, according to head coach Ryan Day. Didn't say anything about who's going to replace him or what that's going to be looking like. We can only probably speculate that Donovan Jackson is going to be tossed out there. But Zen won't be available. So now it's who's going to fill in at guard. Is it Luke Montgomery? Is it potentially Carson Hinsman? Is it Austin Cervell? Like, there's going to be options there. I'm curious to see where they go. And you'll have a feel early on in this game, Schlegs, if it's working or not.
Yeah, that's what we want to see, right? We want to see some of the shakeup there produce results, right? Because last week a lot of the things it wasn't. So, and people have questioned, well, why did they had a bye week to kind of figure this out, what was going on? And that's why I talked about, like, I'm anxious to see what do the first 2-3 series of this game look like.
Absolutely. So we'll find out. We'll see who's playing in there at guard. I'm guessing Donovan Jackson will bump out like he did in the game. I think that's the speculation. Who could it be in there? We'll find out. One guy that no one's talked about, Carson Hinsman, did play a lot at center last year. Hasn't really played a ton this year. Can play some guard. We'll see how they mix that up. And it may be a rotational thing. Who knows what it looks like. All right. Top QB in the Big Ten as far as passing efficiency. And you look at this, Curtis Rourke's been really good. Didn't play last week. He was injured for Indiana. We'll see when he ultimately comes back. But the second quarterback in the Big Ten, as we throw this up here, Pat, is none other than Ohio State's Will Howard. He has been efficient. He's thrown some picks, thrown a lot of touchdowns. He's run the ball at times. He has been everything that we've asked for and more. And I'm excited to see him go play in Happy Valley, get a chance to get a win in a stadium in a place he wanted to go as a Pennsylvania kid.
I'll just take this as along the lines of coaching as well and development. I mean, if you look at Will Howard and what he was able to do at Kansas State, I think his best overall completion percentage was 61%. Now he's completing 74% of his passes. He's got 17 touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns. Obviously we don't like necessarily the picks.
He doesn't have many, though.
Doesn't have many, but he has 4 this year. But I'm excited to see how we utilize his total game, because that was some of the things that he used. He used his legs at Kansas State, and how that impacts their plan running the football moving forward. We'll see that this week at Penn State.
Absolutely. And then we'll throw the last one up here. It's total touchdowns accounted for. So not only is efficiency good, where he's completing a lot of passes, not a lot of interceptions, mostly touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel leading the Big Ten in total touchdowns accounted for, but right behind him, again, is Will Howard. So there's a number of metrics, Schlegs, that have told us how good he is. He's producing. He's been efficient with the football. He was 13 of 16 last week. I would have probably, with how the run game was going, liked to have watched him throw it 20, 22 times and maybe air it out a little more with these talented receivers. You mentioned his completion percentage. He's got great receivers. Let's utilize them, utilize his decision-making. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, those are great metrics. And again, regardless that you transfer, I transferred to Ohio State, you're going to have a voice. He's passionate about this game. As you've alluded to multiple times, Bob, he's a 484 area code kid. He wanted to go to Penn State. Can't wait to see that chip on his shoulder as he goes into Happy Valley and helps the Buckeyes this week.
Well, for Will, hopefully it'll be a happy ending in Happy Valley. We get Tailgate Talk. Answer your questions, your comments, and Schlegs, they've been juicy and frothy as always.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up next.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
Building a home for the people who are worth it. Stepping out, throwing in a line, and dropping the tailgate for a picnic. And finding far-off campsites with the people you're closest to. Upgrade your truck, Jeep, or Bronco with over 1 million parts and accessories. And bring your truck to life. Real Truck.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, Schlegs, now we get to our favorite segment each and every week. It is Tailgate Talk, brought to you by our friends at Real Truck, the #1 truck accessory brand in the United States. Top-selling accessories inside, outside, the interior, the exterior for your truck, Jeep, Bronco. And here's what they're going to be giving to you right now. Here's their pitch. They've got an unbelievable offer for these our show listeners, Schlegs, people that are watching the program. You go spend $100 at realtruck.com, outfitting your truck, Jeep or Bronco. You enter promo code Bobby at the end. You spend $100, you get a free Real Truck hat. It's the swag that you love. It's the swag that you need, and it's coming right at you. Brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. So go to realtruck.com, spend $100, promo code Bobby at checkout, and then you're ready to go. All right, Schlegs. We got our guy Ben Stevens of Sports Grid coming up next, which is going to be beefy and frothy.
Oh, so
we got
beefy.
a couple of questions. Emily Go Bucks 79. What is your response to what people are saying about Day and the defensive coaches? Day is saying that they're going to rotate on the line, and we aren't rotating, and we have guys, and we have the guys to bring in and play that well. Secondly, are the gloves going to work on Iggy? I think meaning Davidson Igbenusson, as a lot of times they put those gloves, the boxing gloves on him, so you can't hold it. It forces you not to grab and be more disciplined. So first of all, Ryan Day came out, said, I think we got some guys, that we can play, we can rotate. And then Jim Knowles said, hey, I defer on the rotations to Larry Johnson. And so people were like, well, what does this mean? Like the head coach is saying something. Where's it at? I'm like, hey, I always say that great leaders, like they don't talk about everything out in public. Like if things are said and things are going to happen, watch what is ultimately done and what happens in the game. I'm a believer that they'll probably rotate and continue to change some stuff up a little bit, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, Bob. Again, you're not going to just air out all the laundry that is talked about behind closed doors. He made the statement. Let's wait and see what happens. Again, nobody's out there going to practice, seeing the rotations of guys. So guess what? We'll see it on Saturday. Are we rotating more? Yes or no? Because then if we don't, the question will be, why not, Ryan? If we do, then there won't be any questions, right? So, and then again with the gloves, guys, listen, man, always be developing, always be working, right? So if we want to, it doesn't matter what week it is that you're working on things, you put the gloves on, hey, I'm just trying to get better. He's probably not the only one that's out there working on it. It might be like, you know what, let's continue to emphasize this because this is a fundamental of the position.
All right, Schlegs, here's another one for you.
Oh, I love it. So juicy.
Oh, you're not going to like this. It's from Max Littleman.
Okay.
The further the program gets into the evangelical mega church proselytizing, the further they get away from playing tough football. Laugh all you want, but I speak facts. Schlegs, I want you and Max. We're going to set up a cage, and I would like this. I know you once offered Paul Feinbaum for King of the Ring, but that you had Paul Feinbaum King of the Ring. But I think you and Max would like to do that because you're a fairly strong man of faith, I would say. But I also think that you're a fairly tough guy, even though you look like a goober right now.
Yeah, it's okay. Hey, listen, I mean, everybody has their opinion, right? And we're talking about things that are everlasting versus a game. And you're trying to say that constitutes your lack of toughness and your willingness to not have contact. Like it makes absolutely no sense to me because Reggie White was a great man of faith, played the game at a very, very high level, very, very violent level. You look at all the wrestlers that are out there, guys, some of the best in the entire world in wrestling, huge men of faith, right? So I just pumped the brakes now. I also say this, I do happen to run a facility called the Armory, and it's 66,000 square feet. And if we have a waiver that somebody wants to sign just to test their metal, I'm always game for that. As everybody knows, I'm always gas station ready. Within the rules, I'm prepared, right? Waffle House ready, gas station ready. I'm always ready, but hey, it's all good. That might be your perception. That's not necessarily the reality because you can still go out there and play very physical, very hard, very fast. That's what we do.
All right, Schlegs, on the last one here, am I that prettiest? And this one is pumps under the pile, crossbones, laughing emojis.
Yes.
So, pumps under the pile, weird dudes out. Like if you want to you don't need to trash talk. You just get in their head because then they're unsure about where you're going with things, like what you're about. And then they get a little weird. And I don't think they can be as aggressive because they're uncertain about, when you tackle a dude and maybe give him a couple thrusts before you get up, that weird stuff. It's kind of like Dave Chappelle when they were playing Prince and they were setting those fruit sticks. It gets a little weird sometimes. I enjoy it. We got our guy, Ben Stevens, Sports Grid Radio, make you a smarter bet. Not coming in this big college football weekend. Coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, Schlegs' favorite segment each and every week when we welcome in our friend Ben Stevens. I'm guessing his middle name is Scott because you can give him a follow on X at Ben Scott Stevens, or you can hear him on Sports Grid Radio on Sirius XM, doing a great job all the time there. I get to talk to Ben a lot. He makes me a smarter, better, more knowledge about the games. And we're going into Halloween weekend here. That means the fangs come out. Weird things can happen.
Big time.
I want to get your spookiest bets, maybe things you want to stay away from at the end. But I want to open up with the big noon kick, the entree that everybody's looking for, the Thanksgiving dinner to start the day. 3 versus 4 in Happy Valley. Penn State welcoming the Buckeyes. A little more than a field goal. I've seen a field goal and a hook most places. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have dove into all of the narratives and the storyline talk and maybe tried to quell the fears of those in the great C-Bus area right now or throughout the great state of Ohio. I don't need to talk about Ryan Day's record against AP top 5 foes or James Franklin's struggles against AP top 10 teams or, of course, against Ohio State. We'll dive into the numbers for this matchup, because the narrative will be a part of your handicap, and it will be hard in a way to kind of battle the narrative as well as the numbers that you are seeing. Guys, Penn State's a 3.5-point underdog. Still obviously some uncertainty around who is going to start at quarterback. Drew Aller out there this week at practice in State College wearing sweatpants, maybe to cover up a brace on the knee. Perhaps, who knows, Bo Pabula filled in very well in Madison on Saturday night. A lot of the matchup advantages, though, I think, and I'm sorry to say to 2 proud Ohio State alums, actually favor that of the Nittany Lions. It's an elite defense right now for Penn State. Not that it isn't for Ohio State. Of course, the Buckeyes great on that side of the football. 10 red zone attempts this year against them. That's tied for the fewest in all of college football, along with Ole Miss, only 6 touchdowns. So the Buckeyes, as we saw at times against Nebraska, did not break in key and significant moments. But Penn State is elite on the defensive side of the football, especially when it matters most. Second half defense for the Nittany Lions this year, they've only allowed 30 total points in each of their second halves in their 7 games. They're giving up just 3.38 yards per play. Is Texas. The Longhorns, the only one sub 4 yards per play. They're giving up 3.81. And in the second half, Penn State is only allowing 3.38. That is monumental what Tom Allen has done for this Nittany Lions team. And you guys know the struggles Ohio State has had at least the last few weeks and really dominating on the ground. Not what I was expecting with this Chip Kelly offense, 2.1 yards per pop last week against Nebraska. Again, the matchup advantages do favor Penn State. And yet I can't lay or take 3.5 with the Nittany Lions in a step-up spot in State College. My favorite bet for this game, as I've been trying to find a side, a prop, a total to get into, over 45.5, 2 elite defenses, but Ohio State's only over, and it's 4 Big Ten games. The road game in Eugene, the only game the Buckeyes have played this year with a point spread of 17 points or less. Penn State has only played 2 overs this year against Bowling Green, and the only time the Nittany Lions laid less than a 4.5 in a spot, that was against USC in the overtime thriller in LA. So I actually think we see a couple of points, not many, but enough to push us over 45.5 inside Beaver Stadium on Saturday.
Dang. But you're going with the Buckeyes. All right, we won't go there. But hey,
listen, I'll say this. In a picks pool, right, where it's just straight up, no point spread under that, and then you give points based on, confidence, 18 being the most, 1 being the least. I did pick Ohio State, put about 3 points of confidence into it, but I did pick Ohio State outright.
Good for you, man. I appreciate that. So let's talk about some other games. One thing that's kind of like on the radar for me is this Duke-Miami, because we've been seeing some things with Miami. How are you looking about that on the betting wise?
Yeah, I bet this game really early in the week, Schlegs. I was surprised to see it at 3 touchdowns. Now, Miami is deserving of being a very large favorite. The Canes covered in their first 3 FBS games this year, but they've only covered once in their last 4. They closed as a 22-point favorite against Florida State in the consensus betting market, so they won that game by 22. They've also gone over in 6 of their first 7 games, under last week, their first true under against FSU. But this is a Duke team led by Manny Diaz that has been really sound this year. Duke 3-0-1 against the number as an underdog. They should have won outright last week against SMU. They had a +6 turnover margin and still found a way to lose that football game in overtime. I'm not thinking Duke pulls the upset. I think Miami stays perfect at 9-0. I think Duke can keep this game within 3 touchdowns, and that's all that we are asking. Duke is the best passing defense in all of the ACC, allowing 166 yards per game this year. That's top 10 in the country. They picked off Kevin Jennings, SMU's quarterback, who was on a roll entering last week 3 times. I'm not saying Cam Ward has a bad day, but we saw FSU limit him a little bit last week. First time this year with less than 304 yards in a game or without multiple touchdown passes. He threw for just barely over 200 and 0 touchdown tosses last week against Florida State. Now, Miami might take advantage on the ground with both Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher Jr., but I think Duke does enough defensively to keep this game within the number. I bet the Blue Devils plus 20.5 earlier in the week, Schlegs. It's how I still feel.
Let's take a look at a game that is probably a lot closer than many people think. Texas A&M has been undefeated since their opening loss to Notre Dame. They're heading to South Carolina, down to Columbia at Williams-Brice Stadium. South Carolina 4-4. They've had some close wins, some close losses. They've got a really good defensive front. And because of that, they're only a 2.5-point road dog. Like, this seems almost like a toss-up to me, and I think the line reflects that. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, Bobby, it's really well said. They have a great defensive front. Dylan Stewart, Kyle Kennard continue to make plays both in attacking the quarterback and stopping the run. South Carolina, one of a handful of teams this year, 25 or more sacks up front and allowing less than 100 yards per game on the ground. The Gamecocks have been really good defensively. In South Carolina, often a really good underdog, as we have seen this year. The outright win against Kentucky early in the season. They kept it tight against LSU. Ole Miss did go into South Carolina and cover a number. I do think the Cox can keep this game close, but now we're talking, at least based on college football spreads, a pick 'em. This is less than 3. It's only 2.5 points in favor of A&M. It smells fishier and feels trappier than I would expect it to be. Listen, I think we saw last week what a lot of people have known throughout this year. Connor Wigman ain't it. He's just not. Multiple interceptions in their 2 marquee games of the season. Put him on the bench. Let Marcel Reed go. And not only is Marcel Reed a great athlete himself, I think he opens up the ground game for Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss as well. For me, I would lay 2.5 with A&M just based on my own power ratings, but the power ratings and the algorithms of the odds makers say this game is an absolute trap spot. I will probably stay away. It feels like A&M is the better team and maybe not fully deserving. Favored in all 8 games this year for the Aggies, just 3-5 against the number. I guess that could be the hesitation. Feels a little bit too trappy. There will be some other spots on the board I like a little bit more.
Well, there's another one that's going down in Jacksonville, Florida, Georgia. And I mean, Florida's, as much as everybody's been talking about Billy Napier,
a lot better.
Florida, Georgia, it's a real deal. And they got some injuries over there in Georgia.
They certainly do, Schlegs. And this is a spot where you look at Florida, and it was a terrible start to the year, right? They got housed by Miami. They got beat bad by A&M in the Swamp. They were a home underdog. This will be their 6th game as an underdog so far for the Gators. Not something we're used to saying for this Florida team. And it's going to be a spot where one of the reasons Florida has covered in their last 3 games as an underdog is because of its defense. And UF, by the way, has won outright in 2 of those 3 covers as a dog against Central Florida, who was in its own tailspin, and, of course, a couple of weeks ago against Kentucky. The defense has been lights out. When you think about what they have given up, just what the defense has allowed in regulation, they stifle UCF, who entered that game as one of the best rushing offenses in the country. RJ Harvey, his season low, less than 80 yards on the ground. What they did against Tennessee, a Vols team that offense has come back down to earth, but only 17 points in regulation. And Kentucky had a punt return touchdown in that matchup. They only scored 20. They only scored 13 offensive points in that game against this Florida defense. So for me, Schlegs, when I look at it, I actually lean under 52.5. And here's one of the reasons why. I said when we talked about the Georgia-Texas game a couple of weekends ago that if UGA felt like the right side because they were an underdog and they had not been an underdog since the start of 2021, it would be because of the defense stepping up in a way that Georgia's defense had not throughout the start of this season. UGA under in 5 of 7 games, including that impactful one against Texas. If Georgia is going to flirt with covering a 16.5-point number, or if Florida is going to keep the game within that margin, Schlegs, I lean under 52.5. I think Georgia's defense is going to be a problem the rest of the way, as I think we saw in Kirby Smart's mentality, both entering and exiting the Texas game a couple of Saturdays ago.
All right. Before we get you out of here, Ben, you always do such a great job. I I got one game I want to talk to you about, and then give me some of your best bets, and then maybe the scariest stuff. You've alluded to some that you don't like already. If there's any others out there. We got the Ponies and the Panthers going to be in Dallas, Texas. It's about a little over a touchdown line. They're undefeated Pitt, one loss SMU, and then obviously some of your best bets and maybe scariest lines. The spookiest for Halloween.
I would say if you're an SMU backer or fan, this is spooky as hell. Why are you laying 7.5 against a perfect 7-0 team? Are we that good, or is Pitt that bad, or are the odds makers completely off? And Bobby, this is what we often see with teams that are so overperforming on odds expectation. When does the luck run out, right? TCU 2 years ago, Washington to a lesser extent a season ago. This year with BYU, who was a road underdog in Orlando against UCF. That's crazy to say. The line worked against the Cougs entering that game. Of course, no issue for Kalani Sitake and BYU. It feels like that is this spot for Pittsburgh. Perfect 7-0 for the first time since 1982. They have covered in 6 of their 7 wins, including both of the times as the underdog, winning outright against Cincinnati, winning outright against West Virginia. Why is this team a touchdown underdog? I get it. It's Dallas. Dallas ain't exactly the heart of ACC country where they're about to walk into the former Doak Campbell, which now, of course, is a shell of itself. I lean Pittsburgh in this spot, but more than that, I lean over 58.5 between two defenses that are great at stopping the run, but not great at defending the pass. In both of those games, by the way, for Pitt as an underdog, they allowed at least 27 points. SMU has allowed 20 plus in 4 of its last 5 since losing its only game of the year to BYU. I think we see some points. Good quarterback news for both. It was my hesitation. What will we see out of Eli Holstein and Kevin Jennings dealing with injuries? Both coaches coming out yesterday saying they expect their guys to be ready to go. I go over 58.5. Would stay with points and that theme in the ACC for one of my other better bets. 62.5, the number between Clemson and Louisville. Go look at what the Cards have done defensively this year. Not nearly as good as it was a season ago. The only ACC defense, allowing less than 100 yards per game last season. They're giving up more than $130. I think Phil Maffa has a big day. I think Clemson, who is averaging 48.5 points per game in this 6-game win streak, continues to rack it up over 62.5. And here's maybe one that feels a little spooky. Oregon, Michigan, over 45.5. Listen, when you look at what the Wolverines have done this year, they are not the elite defense that we saw the last few seasons, certainly not last year. In their 6 games against Power 4 competition, over in 5 of 6, the only under against Illinois. When you look at Oregon, one of their few overs this year against Ohio State, that spread was 3.5. Against Boise State, that number was under 21. That was less than a 3-touchdown spread. Even against Oregon State in the Civil War, that number was 3 scores, but not 3 touchdowns. Oregon has gone over in all 3 of its games, featuring less than a 21-plus point spread. And we're not talking 55, 60, 65 points, over 44.5, 45 at a hook. I do think we see some points in a game that people are looking at Michigan being competitive. I don't see it, but I do need about 10 points out of the Wolverines and Davis Warren to get to the over.
All right. He's Ben Scott Stevens, Sports Grid Radio, one of the best every Thursday, Ben. Thank you for spending some time with us. Enjoy this Halloween night. Maybe get some candy out there.
Schlegs, I thought you were rocking like Bobby Carpenter's hairdo from 1993 with long blonde hair. I didn't realize that was more of a beanie or something, but you look good either way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Cousin Eddie.
Yeah, you look good. You look very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, Ben. Ben Scott Stevens, Sports Grid Radio. Give him a follow at Ben Scott Stevens on the X Machine. He'll make you a smarter football consumer and a smarter better, which is what you want. All right, coming up, we'll get Schlegs' parting thoughts as we wrap up the show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like... I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, Schlegs, we'll wrap it up. We're going to do our favorite costume we each have both worn. I'm going to start with you. What favorite costume did you ever wear on Halloween?
I'm going to go with favorite because I wore it the most, and probably from the age of 0 to the age of 12, I was a football player in some capacity, and it was just my own stuff. But sometimes I was a zombie football player. I was a vampire football player. I was a throwback football player. I was a new age football player. Guess what I was? A football player. It was fantastic. By far, all-time favorite costume. What about you?
I think one of the best ones I had, my Maverick one is always the go-to. Maverick or Iceman, anytime you're going with Top Gun, like that's a win for the folks. My next favorite one was probably Court and I went as with our guy Brandon Mitchell and his girlfriend at the time. She was a cheerleader at Ohio State. So Brandon and I went as B. Mitch and I went as dude cheerleaders, and they went as football players. And that was pretty cool our senior year. It was a pretty good time. So that was a lot of fun there. And then 2 years ago, I was Richard Gere from Pretty Woman, and Courtney was Julia Roberts, which was, let her be the star. I had some gray in my hair, Schlegs. I looked pretty good and got it rocking. But that's it for today's show. Stay locked in. Tune in tomorrow at 12:30. We got a banger of a show. Ari Wasserman joined us. Schlegs and I will be together on the couch in person, hanging out. It'll be a fun one. Let's go. Stay locked in here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.